I never imagined that one day I'd be standing in front of a government office, being told that my marriage certificate, the one I had cherished for 4 years, was a worthless piece of fake paper. The clerk didn't even blink when he said it, just looked at me like I was some delusional homewrecker chasing after a man who wasn't mine. Ma'am, the stamps on this document are forged. This certificate has no legal effect. It's basically trash. His tone was flat, official, cold. I was frozen. My brain couldn't even process the words for a moment. Ethan Blake and I had lived together as husband and wife for 4 years. I cooked his meals, waited for him during deployments, sent him care packages when he was stationed out of state. And now, just like that, I was being told our marriage had never existed? And then came the real gut punch. Comrade, Captain Blake got married last week. His legal spouse is Dr. Vanessa Carter, the new medical graduate assigned here. The world blurred for a second. Vanessa Carter. My younger sister. The same sister who broke off her engagement to Ethan when she got into Columbia. The same sister who used my college acceptance letter to go in my place while I stayed home and worked in a factory to keep our struggling family afloat. I remember Ethan telling my parents he never loved Vanessa, that I was the one he wanted, that I was always the one. And I was foolish enough to believe him. I stumbled out of the office with people whispering and judging, my face burning with humiliation, labeled as the delusional mistress chasing a married man. I should have known. When I got home that evening, I overheard Ethan talking with my parents, telling them not to tell me about the marriage. I'm just compensating her for the letter swap. It's time to give Qian what she deserves. I've learned how to be a better husband, and I'll make it up to her. My heart shattered right there in the hallway. My parents' me own blood nodded like puppets, agreeing that Vanessa's reputation couldn't be compromised, agreeing that I should stay in the dark. I felt like the walls were caving in. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned, walked into our bedroom, pulled the fake certificate from the drawer, and ripped it to shreds. My hands didn't tremble. Not even a little. I booked a train ticket to New York City that night. But until the day I left, I still had to see Ethan's face every day. He walked out of the kitchen with an apron on, the smell of my favorite braised pork filling the air, like nothing had changed. "Hey Lily, you're back. Come wash up, dinner's ready." His voice was soft, warm, the exact same voice he used when we first got married, when he held my hand to calm my nerves after a bad day. I stared at him in disbelief. 4 years ago, he took a knife to the arm for me during a mugging, and I thought no one would ever love me like that again. After the wedding, his family treated me like I didn't exist, but he always defended me. He used to run out in the middle of the night just to buy me ginger tea when I had cramps. And yet now, I realized all of Ivory's smile. Every hug, every tender word was an act. He never meant any of it. He only married me because he and my parents owed me. I was the backup plan, the ghost wife. My tears fell without warning, and Ethan rushed toward me in panic. "What's wrong, Lily? Did someone upset you? Who hurt you?" His hand reached for mine, and I flinched like he burned me. That hand probably still carried traces of Vanessa's perfume. I couldn't stand the sight of him touching me, pretending to care. I backed away, cold and silent. Just then, my mom's voice called from outside the door. "Ethan, come help with something real quick." He gave me a soft smile, as if everything was still okay. "Wait for me, all right? I'll be right back." He patted my head gently and left without another glance. It was almost funny how many times he had been called away lately. Every other night, a new excuse, a new errand. I used to think it was family stuff, emergencies maybe, but now I knew he was spending nights with his new bride. Our house wasn't his real home anymore. I started packing my things the next day. 4 years of memories filled every inch of that house-me potted daisies in the yard, the matching enamel mugs, the hand-painted plates I picked out myself. There was even a Jean Lou bicycle he bought me because he said the army housing was too small and we had to live off base. "I know you're making a sacrifice," he had said. "This bike is to make the commute easier. Please accept it." I wiped that bike down one last time, planning to sell it at the market in the morning. But before sunrise, Ethan burst into the room like a madman. "Lily, come with me." He looked disheveled, frantic. "What's going on?" I asked warily, already irritated. He looked away. "It's Vanessa. She messed up during surgery. The patient's family is demanding justice. I felt my stomach turn. You want me to go face them? Are you serious right now? He didn't respond. His grip on my wrist tightened. She's a doctor. Her hands are everything. If she gets hurt, she can't save people anymore. You just work at the factory. Even if you get hurt, I can take care of you. I was speechless. Who even was this man? Did he hear himself? Did he realize what he was asking? But before I could pull away, he dragged me out and threw me in front of the grieving family. She's the one who performed the surgery. Don't hurt anyone else. The next thing I knew, a gray-haired woman grabbed my hair and slammed me to the ground. The pain was blinding. My lower abdomen cramped violently as her foot connected with my stomach again and again. She screamed about her dead son and how I would pay with my life. I couldn't even speak properly. My lips were swollen, my face numb from the slaps. And somewhere in that whirlwind of pain, I realized my period was late. I was pregnant. I begged her to stop, told her I wasn't the one, told her I was pregnant. But she just laughed, called me a liar, and kicked harder. Why would your own parents let you be here if you were innocent? That sentence cut deeper than any kick. I had no answer. Because it was true. My parents had thrown me to the wolves without hesitation. And the baby I never got to meet died right there in that alley. When I woke up in the hospital, my hands were in casts, my body covered in bruises, and Ethan sat beside me with red eyes, trying to look guilty. Lily, you're finally awake. I was so scared. I stared at him blankly. He was scared. I was the one who got beaten until I passed out. He reached for my hand again and I yanked it back. He flinched. You blame me, don't you? I didn't know they'd be that violent. I turned my face to the window and didn't respond. I didn't want to hear another word. 1.5 more days. That's all I had to wait. Then I would be on that train and gone for good. I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. I didn't speak to Ethan once during those 2 days in the hospital, no matter how many times he brought me warm water or peeled apples I never asked for. He hovered around like he was auditioning for Husband of the Year, but all I felt was exhaustion. If anything, his presence made the air feel heavier. Back when I still believed in him, I would have smiled through the pain, told him not to overwork himself, maybe even asked about Vanessa like a clueless fool. But now, I just laid there staring at the ceiling, waiting for my discharge papers. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't rage. I was done feeling. I'd already said goodbye in my head 1,000 times. The only thing left was the train ticket tucked into the zipper pocket of my purse, wrinkled but still valid. That tiny slip of paper was the only thing giving me strength. On the morning of the 3rd day, while I was pretending to sleep, I heard the sound of high heels clicking against the hospital floor. I didn't have to open my eyes to know who it was. Her perfume hit me before her voice did. Vanessa Carter, me sister, the golden child, the one who took my future and now stood there acting like she was doing me a favor. You're looking better, she said, dropping a compact mirror onto my blanket. You should see your face, sis. All purple and puffy. I mean, yikes. Her voice was dripping with fake concern and smug satisfaction. She waited until I looked into the mirror. I barely recognized my self-swollen cheeks, a split lip, bruises on my neck. If only Ethan hadn't been so worried about me, she sighed dramatically, twirling the gold wedding band on her finger. You wouldn't have been dragged into this. But what can I say? After all these years, he still loves me. I looked at her without blinking and said, Congrats. That wasn't the response she expected. She tilted her head, confused, then forced a smile. You can stop pretending. You were head over heels for Ethan. Don't act like this doesn't bother you. Her voice turned bitter. I mean, come on, he never loved you. Not really. Just look at how his parents treated you. They never accepted you, and now we both know why. She leaned in like she was delivering a final blow. 4 years wasted, sis. And now you're here, alone and broken. I let her talk. Let her perform. But when Ethan walked back into the room and she immediately fake fainted into his arms, I felt something inside me go ice cold. Lily, why did you push her? Ethan's voice was sharp, defensive. Don't you know she's not feeling well? I stared at him like he was insane. She lost her balance. I didn't touch her. But of course he didn't believe me. I've been taking care of you nonstop, and this is how you behave? Vanessa's health has always been fragile. You should apologize. I almost laughed. You mean like when she made me take a beating in her place and you let it happen? Ethan's eyes narrowed. You're being ridiculous. I have military training tomorrow. I won't be back for a few days. You should think about what you've done. With that, he picked Vanessa up in his arms and walked out, the door slamming behind them. I stared at the empty hallway, my body aching with every breath, and felt nothing but pure, bitter clarity. Ethan didn't see me as a person. I was a placeholder, a convenient shield, a scapegoat for Vanessa's mistakes. The man I gave 4 years of my life to couldn't even imagine that someone like me might have limits. I pulled the train ticket out again, smoothed out the creases, and smiled to myself. 24 hours. Just one more day, and I would be gone. Meanwhile, Ethan's lies kept stacking up. His so-called military training was just another excuse to take Vanessa on a honeymoon. He had no idea that while he was boarding a train south with her, I was boarding one north to start my new life. He even saw someone at the station who looked like me but shook it off. Of course he did. In his world, I would never have the courage to leave him. Not the Lily he remembered. But that Lily didn't exist anymore. The moment he handed me over to that angry mob and let me bleed for his lover's mistakes, he buried the last piece of her. As their train pulled out, mine moved in the opposite direction, carrying me away from a town that had never truly been mine. Away from a fake marriage, a fake family, and a fake love. And into a city where no one knew my name, where I didn't have to explain who I was or who I had failed to become. I stared out the window the entire ride, the countryside blurring into steel and concrete. When I arrived at the New York terminal, the world moved faster, louder, brighter. I stepped onto the platform, still sore, still healing, but something in my chest felt lighter. And then I heard someone call my name. Lily? Lily Carter? I turned around and nearly gasped. There he was, Ryan Sullivan, my high school class president, still wearing the same shy smile, only now in a crisp white shirt and glasses that made him look like the CEO of something important. Long time no see, he said, eyes crinkling with warmth, then falling to my bandaged hands. His smile faded instantly. What happened to you? I tried to brush it off, but he was already dialing his phone. You're going straight to the hospital, he said, not taking no for an answer. I ended up in one of the best private hospitals in the city, tucked into a warm bed in a ward that probably cost more than my entire hometown house. I protested, of course, but Ryan wouldn't hear it. You've been through hell, he said, voice tight with anger. If I'd known what those people were doing to you, I would have come sooner. He peeled a pomelo with ridiculous care and placed it on a plate beside me. I stared at the yellow fruit and felt my eyes sting. You remembered I liked pomelo? Of course, he said with a shrug. You hated apples. Always picked them out of your lunchbox. But pomelo? You used to light up whenever you saw one. It was such a simple thing, but I felt my throat tighten. Ethan never once got it right in 4 years. Every time he tried to comfort me, he brought apples. Maybe that was the difference between real love and obligation. Ryan, I said quietly, do you remember what you said to me back in high school? His hands froze. About marrying you someday? He turned red immediately. Lily, you don't have to don't feel pressured. I don't want to take advantage of you being vulnerable. I smiled softly. I'm not. I just want to know if the offer's still on the table. He blinked. You mean? I mean, if you don't mind that I've been through all this, if you don't mind that I'm not some shiny, untouched trophy, then yeah, I'd like to be your wife. He looked like someone had handed him the moon. Mind? Lily, you're the one doing me the favor. Of course, I'll marry you. And just like that, everything changed. I used to think love was sacrifice, that real devotion meant giving up parts of yourself and staying even when you were breaking inside, but Ryan showed me that love could be soft and warm, that it didn't have to hurt to feel real, and in that half-month I spent recovering in the hospital, the entire building somehow knew I was his fiancée before I even said yes out loud. The nurses started calling me Mrs. Sullivan like it was already official, and Ryan, being the cheerful fool that he was, would smile every time and nod proudly like he'd won the lottery, which, according to him, he had, because no matter how many times I tried to downplay it, tried to tell him that I came with too much baggage, too much pain, He always looked at me like I was a miracle he never expected to deserve, and honestly, that kind of gaze was something I'd never received before. Not from Ethan. Not even from my own family. Ryan never asked me what I wanted to eat. He just brought exactly what I liked, as if he had memorized all the tiny details from high school and never stopped caring. He even remembered I hated onions, and I don't even remember telling him that back then. It was like I had been seen for the first time in years, really seen, and that simple realization made me cry more than the beating ever did. It was in those small gestures, fluffing my pillow when he thought I was asleep, massaging my sore arms with trembling hands, brushing my hair back without saying a word, that I realized how empty my past 4 years had been. How many times I'd excused Ethan's lack of attentiveness, how often I told myself that he was just busy, just tired, just focused on work, but Ryan wasn't even trying to impress me. He just wanted me to feel safe, and I started to gain weight for the first time in a long time. My jaw softened, the hollowness under my eyes faded, my body still hurt, but my heart started healing quietly, and when we finally walked out of that hospital together, the sunlight on my skin felt like a fresh start, not the beginning of another performance. 3 days later, we registered our marriage and held a small but elegant wedding at a hotel in the city. I wore red, not because I wanted to honor tradition, but because I wanted to reclaim it. I wanted to walk down the aisle boldly, eyes up, spine straight, without hiding behind a curtain of shame. This time there was no secrecy, no guilt, no one whispering about whether I was worthy, because I was surrounded by people who clapped for me, who smiled like I belonged, like I deserved to be loved out loud. It was the kind of joy I didn't even know I had the right to wish for, and I remember laughing so much that day my face hurt. Ryan kept holding my hand like he was afraid someone might take me away again, and in that moment I realized I had found someone who would fight to keep me, not just keep me around to pay off a debt or fix a mistake. But of course the universe never lets things end neatly, and just as the music started to wind down and the guests began to leave, the doors flew open and in walked Ethan Blake in full military uniform, his face pale, eyes bloodshot, and the moment our eyes met, I knew he hadn't come to congratulate me. "Lily, where the hell have you been?" he demanded, stepping into the center of the room like he still had a claim over me. "Do you have any idea how worried we were? What are you doing? How could you marry someone else?" The room fell silent, all eyes flicking between us like they were watching some soap opera unfold in real life. I took a step back and smiled coldly. "Brother-in-law, today is my wedding day. Please don't make a scene." He froze, the words slicing through the air like a blade. "Brother-in-law? You Lily, you know?" I tilted my head, pretending to think. "You mean about you and my sister Vanessa faking a marriage with me to cover your asses?" "Oh yeah, I know." His face turned ghostly white, but there was still this pathetic flicker of hope in his eyes, like maybe I'd change my mind. Maybe I'd take him back. "Lily, I can explain, please." But Ryan stepped in, his voice calm but sharp as glass. "Captain Blake, do you treat me like I'm invisible? What part of any of this makes you think you still get a say?" Ethan's jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides. "You don't understand. We were confused. Vanessa was desperate. Our parents," Ryan didn't let him finish. "Confused? Vanessa stole Lily's college admission. You all forged a marriage certificate. You let her get beaten half to death while you stood by and watched. That's not confusion. That's calculated cruelty." Ethan looked like he was about to argue, but Ryan kept going. "You didn't love her. You loved her usefulness. She covered your secrets. She made you look like a good man. But now? Now she's free, and you can't stand that." I stood silently as the truth laid itself bare in front of everyone, and when Ethan tried to speak again, I slapped him across the face, hard, and the entire room gasped. "Ryan is my legal husband, and I'm proud to say it," I said steadily, holding Ryan's hand tighter. "You're just my sister's husband, me brother-in-law. Nothing more. Don't embarrass yourself at my wedding." Ethan stared at me like I had stabbed him in the chest, but I didn't feel sorry anymore, not even a little. He opened his mouth to argue, but Ryan cut him off with a smug smile. "You heard her, man. Now do us all a favor and leave." Ethan stood there for a long beat, humiliated, stunned, then turned and left without another word. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought he'd take the hint and move on. But the next morning when I opened my apartment door, he was standing there, hair messy, eyes red, looking like a stray dog left in the rain. "Lily, please, can we talk?" I didn't say anything, just stared at him in disgust. You said you never wanted me. I whispered. You let me get hurt to protect Vanessa. You threw me away like trash. He stepped forward desperately. I didn't mean to. I never wanted you to leave if it's about Vanessa. I'll divorce her. I swear. We can fix this. I blinked slowly. You think I care about fairness now? You think it matters that you divorce her after everything? I'm married, Ethan, and unlike your little performance, mine is real. His face crumbled, and I turned my back without another word, closing the door on him, and on the life I never wanted back. I really thought that after I slammed the door on him at my wedding, after I made it crystal clear that he was nothing but my sister's husband and a lying coward, Ethan would finally get the message and disappear from my life for good. But clearly, I overestimated his ability to let go of something he thought he still had control over, because for the next week straight, every time I opened my front door, there he was, sitting on the steps like a rain-soaked dog, looking more pitiful each day. His eyes red-rimmed, his hair messier than ever, and his once pristine uniform now creased and worn like even it had stopped respecting him. At first I tried ignoring him, just walking past without a glance, but he'd look up with those pathetic eyes and say things like, Lily, I couldn't sleep last night, or Lily, I brought you breakfast, your favorite, and every time I just wanted to scream, because it wasn't love that kept him coming back, it was possession, it was guilt, it was a man who realized too late that his backup plan had walked away and wasn't turning around, and the worst part was he still didn't get it. He still thought this was about Vanessa, like I was jealous or competing, like I was waiting for my turn. So when I finally snapped and said, Can you stop haunting my doorstep and let me live the life you stole from me? He actually looked confused, as if he hadn't destroyed it already. Lily, I know I made mistakes, but I can fix them. I'll leave Vanessa. We can be together. You don't even have to divorce Ryan. I'll divorce too. We'll both be remarried. It's fair. He said it with the sincerity of someone offering a buy one get one free coupon for heartbreak, and I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. You think fairness is the issue here? You think matching divorce counts a race is what you did? And he stammered, I know it wasn't right, but Vanessa needed help and my parents, and I just cut him off. Save it. Ethan, you didn't stay with her out of duty. You stayed because you wanted to. You lied to me because it was easier than facing what you owed me. And as if the universe finally heard my plea to be left alone, Ethan disappeared after that conversation. I didn't see him for days and thought maybe he'd finally crawled back to Vanessa, but Ryan knew better, because the whole time I was trying to move on quietly, Ryan was working behind the scenes like the silent hero he was, collecting evidence, making phone calls, talking to reporters, and one morning, he slid a newspaper across the breakfast table, his eyes calm but serious. It's time everyone knew the truth. And there on the front page was the full story: how my college admission letter had been stolen, how I was tricked into a fake marriage, how I was sent to the hospital in someone else's place, how my parents and sister had conspired to erase my identity to protect theirs, and the article didn't just expose Ethan and Vanessa, it exposed the entire Carter family, and as expected, it blew up fast. That small town we came from practically ran on gossip and judgment. So when the truth came out, the people who once sneered at me now couldn't apologize fast enough. Neighbors I hadn't seen in years were leaving voicemail after voicemail saying, We had no idea. Lily, you didn't deserve that. Even the hospital staff who let me take the fall showed up at my apartment doorstep with red faces and trembling voices. We're so sorry. We thought you were a mistress. We never knew you were the victim. And honestly, I didn't hold on to the anger for them, because they were just pawns, used the same way I was, fooled by a well-rehearsed lie. The real villains were the ones who orchestrated it all. And karma didn't miss a beat. This time Vanessa's medical license was revoked, the hospital blacklisted her, and every job application she submitted after that got turned away at the door. Ethan was reprimanded by the military for conduct violations, and his promotion track was permanently frozen. He was stuck in a dead-end position where no one respected him. My parents, who once walked with their heads high and their mouths full of pride about their perfect daughter Vanessa, were now the shame of the neighborhood. People pointed at them in the market, muttering under their breath, calling them cold-blooded, calling them monsters, and they tried to reach out to me. Of course they did. Tried to play the sorrowful parents routine, knocking on my apartment door with fake concern, asking if I was okay, and Ryan, bless his protective heart, blocked them every time, arms crossed, voice cold. You don't get to upset my wife again. Go pretend to be parents somewhere else. And when they tried showing up at my workplace, Ryan actually had them banned from the building. He made it his full-time job to be the wall between me and anyone who dared try to hurt me again, and I never thought I'd say this, but for the first time in my life, I felt untouchable. Not because I had power, but because I finally had someone willing to protect me like I mattered, the way I should have been protected all along. And you know what's funny? Vanessa, for all her manipulation, refused to divorce Ethan even after he lost everything, because she knew she couldn't survive without him, and Ethan, who once basked in her attention, now couldn't stand the sight of her. Their once sparkly romance turned into a full-blown toxic circus. They fought constantly, screamed over the smallest things, and Ethan, who once adored her little pouting face, now looked at her like she was the reason for every failure in his life. And in a way, she was. But also, so was he, and the resentment between them grew like a disease, until one night, it snapped. Vanessa taunted him, called him pathetic, said, "Lily's daughter is already running around the park, and you're still stuck dreaming about her like some sad loser," and something in Ethan cracked. He grabbed her by the throat in a blind rage, screamed that if he'd known how cruel she was, he never would have given up on me, and by the time he came to his senses, she was dead on the floor, just like that. Captain Ethan Blake, once the golden boy of the army, was sentenced to life for the murder of his wife, and my parents, having lost their favorite child and their social standing, tried one last time to worm their way back into my life. But Ryan shut them out so hard they never knocked again, and as for me, I was standing in our kitchen that morning, holding our toddler daughter in one arm and spooning yogurt into her mouth with the other, when Ryan walked in, kissed my forehead, and said, "Ignore the noise, babe, let's go build a treehouse later." And I smiled because in that moment, I finally understood what peace felt like. Not revenge, not rage, not even justice, just peace, just freedom, just a quiet morning with my little family and the man who chose me every single day. Some people think that once you've moved on, you stop thinking about the past altogether, like memories just fold themselves up and disappear into some dusty drawer you never open again, but that's not how it works, at least not for me, because even on the good days, the days when Ryan surprises me with a box of my favorite grapefruit candies, or when our daughter tries to say a new word and ends up babbling nonsense that makes us both burst out laughing, the past still lingers like an old scar. That doesn't hurt anymore, but still reminds you of what once did. I don't dwell on it. Not the way I used to when I couldn't fall asleep or when I'd wake up gasping from nightmares, but sometimes, especially when I walk past our bookshelf and see the framed photo from our wedding dame in that bold red dress, Ryan beaming like he'd won the lottery. I remember the girl I used to be, the one who thought love was about endurance and silence and swallowing pain without flinching, and I want to go back and hold her hand. I want to tell her she was never asking for too much, that basic respect, loyalty, and affection were not luxuries she had to earn, but bare minimums she always deserved. And while I may never get the chance to rewrite those years, I did get the chance to rewrite my ending, and that, to me, is more than enough. Still, the aftermath of it all didn't completely vanish just because I stopped talking about it. In fact, the consequences played out slowly, like a delayed avalanche, starting with the gossip column that kept updating on Ethan's downfall, every headline more humiliating than the last. Former Captain Blake denied parole after outburst in courtroom. Widower or murderer? Vanessa Carter's death still sparks debate. From honor to horror. The rise and fall of Ethan Blake. And I didn't go out of my way to read those articles, but people sent them to me anyway. Old neighbors, ex-colleagues, even nurses from the hospital who once avoided eye contact with me now eagerly forwarded me every piece of Ethan's public disgrace, like they wanted to apologize through headlines. Like if they showed me how far he'd fallen, it would somehow make up for the way they once looked down on me, and maybe I shouldn't have felt satisfaction. Maybe I should have turned the other cheek. But truthfully, seeing Ethan reduced to a cautionary tale didn't just bring closure, it brought justice. Not the kind delivered in a courtroom, but the kind that settles in your soul and says, "You are right to walk away." And as for my parents, they faded into obscurity faster than even I anticipated. After losing Vanessa, their favorite child and entire identity, they tried once more to come to me. This time with trembling voices and gray hair and the kind of sorrow that only shows up when consequences finally catch up. But Ryan made it clear from the start that my peace wasn't up for negotiation. He stood at our doorway like a wall and told them calmly, "We're not interested in reopening wounds just so you can bandage your guilt." And I watched them walk away with slumped shoulders, holding on to each other not out of love, but survival, because they had no one left. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger or triumph, just indifference, just the kind of cold neutrality that means someone no longer has power over you. And it was in that space of emotional stillness that I flourished. I poured all the energy I used to waste on survival into living instead. I went back to school, finished the degree that was stolen from me, and graduated with honors while holding my baby girl in my arms as I walked across the stage. Ryan cried that day, actual tears, and later he joked that he was the luckiest man alive, married to both a genius and a goddess, and I laughed because even when he overhyped me, it didn't feel fake. It felt like he was proud, genuinely proud, of the woman I had become, and not because of what I went through, but because I came out of it brighter, louder, and more unapologetically myself. We bought a house just outside the city with a backyard and a tree perfect for building a swing set. Ryan spent an entire weekend putting it together with our daughter, supervising him like a tiny boss, hands on hips, yelling, "Higher, Daddy." And when it finally worked and she swung for the first time, giggling so hard she could barely breathe, I thought to myself, this is it. This is everything. And it wasn't glamorous or dramatic. It didn't involve revenge speeches or courtroom victories. Just three people in a backyard, healing from the mess they didn't create. And that's what people don't tell you about healing. Gets boring sometimes. It's slow and quiet, and full of moments so simple they don't look like triumphs, but they are. Every mundane joy is a battle won against the darkness you once thought would swallow you whole. And sometimes people still ask me if I regret anything, if I'd go back and change what happened, and I always say no, not because I wanted to suffer, but because if I had never lived through that betrayal, I might have never known what real love looks like. I might have settled for half-hearted affection and convincing lies, and worse, I might have never met Ryan, never had our daughter, never learned how strong I really was. But the story didn't just end with my happy family, because sometimes healing is not just about creating a better life, but also confronting the ones who tried to destroy you. And that final confrontation came not from something I planned, but from something that happened years later. When I was asked to speak at a conference for women in recovery, women who had survived emotional abuse, betrayal, violence, and when I stood on that stage, looking into their eyes, I realized I wasn't just telling my story anymore, I was telling ours. I spoke about the fake marriage, the miscarriage, the stolen education, the hospital bed, the wedding crash, and then the quiet rebirth. And when I finished, the applause wasn't loud, but it was deep, raw, real, and among the crowd, I saw a young woman crying silently, her hands shaking, and when I hugged her afterward, she whispered, "I thought I was crazy for leaving." And I said, "No, you were brave." And in that moment, I knew I hadn't just survived for myself. I had survived for everyone who thought they had to stay quiet, who thought they had to settle. And when I went home that night, Ryan was waiting on the porch with our daughter asleep on his shoulder, and he said, "You look powerful, like you just saved the world." And maybe I did, maybe just a little, because the world I saved was mine. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I hadn't torn that marriage certificate by accident that day, if I had never gone to reissue it and instead kept playing house with Ethan Blake, never finding out the truth, never escaping the cage of duty and family, never realizing I was living someone else's version of happiness. And the thought terrifies me more than anything I've lived through, because if I hadn't left, I would have missed out on everything that truly mattered, on the quiet mornings when Ryan brings me coffee before my alarm even goes off, on the little arms that wrap around my neck and call me mommy, with giggles that erase every scar from my past, on the warmth of a home built from respect instead of manipulation, because the life I live now isn't perfect, it still has moments of messiness, of stress, of fatigue, but it's mine completely, and no one can take that from me again. Even now, years later, there are still people from my past who try to insert themselves into my present, like the distant cousin who messaged me on social media asking if I could help recommend Vanessa for a job because she's been through a lot, as if her suffering started with her own consequences and not with the choices she made, as if the woman who wore a stolen wedding ring and smiled in my face while hiding my husband behind my back deserved sympathy without accountability, or like my mother, who showed up uninvited at our daughter's school recital, sitting in the back row, with fake tears and a bouquet of flowers she never once gave me in childhood, and afterwards had the nerve to say, "You look so grown up now, Lily. You remind me of Vanessa." And I just stared at her with the calm of a woman who no longer needs validation. "No, I don't," I replied. "I look like meth version you never wanted to see." And I walked right past her, because closure isn't about dramatic apologies or grand gestures. It's about realizing you no longer owe anyone the benefit of your Silence, not the people who hurt you, not the ones who watch silently, and especially not the ones who expect you to be the bigger person just so they can feel better about being small. And maybe that's why I've never regretted speaking out. Never regretted standing in that courtroom when they processed Ethan's sentencing. Never regretted watching the public learn who he truly was behind that uniform and polished smile. Because sometimes people like him can only be exposed by the spotlight, not through personal confrontation, and knowing that he's living the rest of his life behind bars. No more medals, no more parades, just iron bars and empty silence. That's enough for Minute because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the record corrected, and now it is. And as for me, I've done more than survive, I've thrived. I've rebuilt my career, became a counselor for women navigating betrayal and recovery, started a foundation in my name to help those who've been silenced the way I once was. And when I sit in a room full of survivors and hear their stories, when they thank me with trembling hands and cracked voices, I always tell them the same thing. You did this, not me. You chose yourself. Because as much as I've rebuilt, as much as I've accomplished, none of it came from being special. It came from choosing, over and over, to get up when I was broken, to walk away when I was disrespected, to protect my peace like it was sacred. And it is, now more than ever, especially. When I watch Ryan play in the yard with our daughter, who now talks so much she barely takes a breath between sentences, and she'll ask questions like, "Mommy, were you a princess before Daddy met you?" And I smile and say, "Not a princess, sweetheart, something even stronger." Because fairy tales are nice, but real life is better, especially when you're not waiting for someone else to save you. Especially when you've already done the saving yourself. And as the sun sets on another day filled with chaos and bedtime stories and mismatched socks, I lie in bed next to the man who never made me beg for love and think, maybe everything really did happen for a reason, not because I deserved the pain, but because I deserved what came after with clarity, the courage, the second chance to live loudly and love completely. And maybe that's what real healing is, not forgetting the past but no longer being afraid of it, not needing to explain yourself to anyone who doesn't already know your worth. And if there's one thing I hope people take away from my story, it's this: you are allowed to leave. You are allowed to choose peace over appearances, truth over tradition, and love that doesn't ask you to shrink yourself just to fit someone else's version of perfect, because you are not a placeholder, not a backup plan, not a sacrifice to someone else's dreams. You are the main character of your own life, and if no one has told you yet, let me be the first to say you deserve to be happy. And more than that, you deserve to be free.